And welcome back to College Football Tradition, a history of American college football. My name is Brian Partika, and I'm joined alongside my bro host and co-host Jacob Vanderford, and we are here to talk about the 1883 college football season. This one was huge because we saw a lot of differences in how our points are going to be calculated. What's a touchdown? What's a field goal? What's a point after touchdowns? How is that going to look on the scoreboard? So, Jacob, I know you have some updates for us on what Walter Camp came up with.
Yeah, so y'all know Walter Camp, father of American college football. Really played for Yale over the past several years, and then started to change a lot of the rules in the 1880s. So starting now in this year in 1883, he started to settle on a few different things. One of which was 5 points is how they would calculate a field goal, which is so interesting now, like because now it's 3 points. How did they get to that number? Why did they choose that? Who knows? I want to put myself back in Walter Camp's mind back in the day. Um, 4 points for touchdowns. Touchdowns were less than field goals at the time, which is insane. We see touchdowns now as like the end all be all. Like you get a touchdown, that's what you want. You can't keep settling for field goals now. But at that time, you wanted to get as many field goals as you could. And then 2 points for kicks after touchdowns. So those extra points instead of 1 point, it was two. And then 2 points for safeties as well. So that was kind of the one rule out of all of those sets of rules where it kind of stayed the same throughout the course of time, which is so interesting as well. And yeah, that was kind of the rule book of the time. Things changed, and will continue to change as college football evolved. But it's so weird to think about like field goals being the highest points that you could achieve. And over the several years, we're seeing again like the forward pass entering more and more. Obviously, running the football was the big way that they wanted to score. But that's kind of the role breakdown from Jacob.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that Walter Camp had so much weight in the sport of American college football. People knew that he was the guy. So when he
Mhm.
was creating all these rules and kind of giving it off to Harvard and Yale and Princeton and some of those other Ivy League schools and Northeast schools, they were taking it and running with it. Now, it's important to note when you see scores from the 1880s, some of them are going to look like scores from the 1870s, where it's like, oh, 2-1 or 3-1, because not everybody was playing by the rules yet. But the big boys, the blue bloods at the time, the Yales, the Harvards, the Princetons, the Columbias, they were playing by this scoring system. And you mentioned it, 5 points for a field goal, but only four for touchdowns. So really, I mean, if you got down the field, you were able to kick a field goal and get those 5 points. If you got in and got those 4 points for the touchdown, you still had the chance to get the 2 point extra point, which is what it was. So you still had a chance to get more, six compared to five, but the amount of missed field goals at the time was crazy. They were missing field goals and extra points left and right, literally left and right. So I think it's just hilarious to kind of see some of the scores that came out during this time because you see Yale beating up on teams 100-0, 56-6, like things like that. I mean, just complete and utter dominance across the board, especially from Yale during this season.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point about just field goals. I think field goals are probably the toughest thing, especially at that time. Like, it was probably really hard to find somebody that could kick it through an upright or whatever. And like even now, like we have training programs where like you can put guys through recruiting programs where they can practice their kicking. They recruit people from like soccer and they kick field goals and things like that. Like probably at this time, you probably had like one or two kickers that could do a good job. And they were probably on these Yale and Princeton teams, and some of these other schools just couldn't keep up because they didn't have the talent or the training to know how to do it. So I think that's why you don't you saw a lot of misses. You're not seeing a lot of those field goals or extra points. A lot of those touchdowns are probably a lot easier to get at this time. So I always look at things through that historical context of like what were they like going through at the time? Like who did they have on the field? What kind of talent that they have? Like they were all introducing all these new rules. So I think that's probably why you're not seeing as many field goals.
Right, absolutely. And it's definitely something to note there. And when we look at Yale, so they were 9-0 on the year. They are the undisputed retroactive national champions for 1883. and I think that we both agree on that one. They went on a huge streak of 8 straight games to start the year where they didn't give up a single point, and that included a 6-0 victory over Princeton at Polo Grounds. And then they end the year. They usually were ending the year against Princeton, but they were ending this year against Harvard. They kicked that game off at around 2:30, also in Polo Grounds, and that's the first time they gave up points all year. They won that game 23-2. So it's assumed that that Harvard was able to get a safety on Yale. But man, just utter dominance from the Yale Bulldogs. They outscored their opponents 540-2. Just absolutely crazy. Their scores from this season: 58-0, 90-0, 59-0, 92-0, 49-0, 93-0, 64-0 over Michigan. And then you got those Princeton and Yale victories at the end to close it out. But they were absolutely just dominating the teams that they played against.
Like video game numbers. That's how I score in NCAA 25. Like
That's not how I score in NCAA 25. I'm way worse. I'm getting losing to 12-year-olds online. It's not funny.
I mean, I do play on the beginner set level,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's probably why. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing of note from this season, I thought that this was interesting. Gallaudet University, so that's a college for people who are deaf. They played their inaugural season in 1883. They're now currently an NCAA Division III school, and they went 2-0 this season against Georgetown. But if you do you remember the commercials with the helmets, with the AT&T helmets, where they would be able to like kind of call plays even if you can't hear? Do you remember those commercials?
I don't think so. I'll have to look that up. I'm sure our
Yeah.
listeners have seen those before. I'm
Yeah,
just like
I think our
one of those.
listeners would have seen it before
Yeah.
because yeah. You know what? I might have it right here actually.
Yes.
Let me pull this up
Share
and
the
see.
screen.
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen here and see if uh yeah, see if people remember this commercial. Um
Whoa, not the buffalo on the field. That's
yes,
crazy.
do you remember that commercial? Thank you very much.
A little bit, yeah.
Oof. Yeah, I always think of that commercial. And it was so interesting that I saw that, oh, Gallaudet's in their first season here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy.
just absolutely crazy.
It is it's wild to see like Princeton, like Yale only beat Princeton 6-0, it looks like.
Yeah,
I mean, they played Yale pretty well, judging by the scores of that they beat their other opponents by, like in the 50s, 90s even. Like that was a tough game. So that just shows how close Princeton was.
yeah. I mean, Princeton was a great squad that year too. I mean,
I know.
they weren't dominating their opponents like Yale was, but they beat Rutgers 20-0. Then beat them again 61-0. They beat a pretty decent Penn squad 41-6. They beat Harvard 26-7. So in a
Yeah.
similar fashion that Yale would end up doing. So they were undefeated going into that final game as well, with every chance at the national championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good teams.
Good teams, great teams. Some of the historic teams of that time.
Yes. The
Oh,
Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States of that time, if you will.
absolutely, absolutely. The 1990s Nebraskas.
Yeah. I need to stop talking about Nebraska. I feel like I talk about them every episode.
Let
Everybody's
me
gonna know that I'm a Husker fan. That's okay. We need to talk about Youngstown State at some point.
we do need to talk about Youngstown State. We absolutely do. When we get to the 90s and we see them beating up on those MAC schools, we'll talk about Youngstown State more.
Yep. They were the
Plenty
Yale of their day.
the Yale of the FCS of the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. We we do have some unblemished recognition to give out as well. We talked about Galladay. They went 2-0. Carleton, they went 1-0. Johns Hopkins, they went 1-0. And NYU also went 1-0. None of these were against spectacular competition. Sorry, excuse me, spectacular competition. But at the same time, we still have those unblemished recognitions for 1883.
Yeah, and I think like we're both in agreement that Yale is definitely the champion of this year. They've been the champion for the past several years. And just beating that Princeton team that we talked about, they were undefeated. Harvard was also a really good squad, having that one loss as well. So I think, yeah, just the way that they were able to beat these teams over and over again, how just the annihilation that happened in those games was insane. And so I think that pushes them over the top, and that's why they're our champion.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And we would have almost been talking about a three-way championship if Harvard was able to take down Yale at the season's end, because you had Princeton who beat Harvard and you had Yale who beat Princeton. But if Harvard would have beaten Yale at the end of the year, we would have had a three-way tie conundrum situation up there. But we didn't end up having that. That's okay.
And that's okay.
Would have been a lot more fun to talk about that pick one champion. Yeah,
Yeah,
dang it.
that's
But
okay. We'll have some more of those coming up.
yeah, we
We'll have
definitely
some good
will.
debates.
We will have some phenomenal debates. I mean, I cannot wait to post some of these articles that are coming up. We have 1884 and 1885 going out early next week, and then we'll be able to talk about them as well. So feel free to stay up to date on our LinkedIn page as we post those articles and our champions from college football tradition and our pick one champions from each year.
Yeah. And I also want to tease, we have some fun discussions and series coming up, one of which is position universities. So we're going to talk about RBU, wide receiver U, tight end U, even offensive lineman U. Brian and I are going to come prepared with some stats, maybe me not as much, but Brian will have a ton of stats to back himself up. And I'm just going to be like, yeah, they are it, you know? And these are the players that are behind it. So, yeah, get excited for that.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. We'll get to that this summer and some other fun episodes as well. But Jacob, do you have anything else on 1883 before we wrap up today?
That's it. Yale rules.
Yale rules. Walter Camp is the man. That's
The goat of the time, if you will.
the GOAT. You know, it's interesting. He was a Yale graduate, and Yale won under the new rules that he put in place before the season.
Hmm.
Makes you think.
Curious.
Curious. Well, that's all we have for you today. We will catch you next time. For Jacob Vanderfort, I'm Brian Partika. Sorry, man, I have a popcorn in my throat. I'm Brian Partika, but this is College Football Tradition, a history of American college football, and we will see you next time.